My father told me when I was young, don't play with fire, be careful, son. But we were flames that fell.
Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I thought I would sit down and read a story that I found on the internet. It's kind of a creepier one, and I don't know, I'm just excited to read this, so let's just go ahead and jump into it because I have a feeling this is going to be a longer video. My freshman year of college was one of the funnest years of my life, and some of my fondest memories are from that year. But it was also the scariest and strangest year to date. I'm 31 now. This is thanks to one story in particular. There are actually a couple more that I might post some other time that take place over the entire school year. I still sometimes wonder how this really happened and I didn't end up in a shut-in nut job, and it still freaks me out to this day. I've only talked about this once or twice since it happened 13 years ago. August 2001. Like most freshmen, I lived in the dorms at a state party school. I opted out of the good school that I got into. I guess I had a little steam to blow off after graduating from a military college prep boarding school. Plus, after a sports injury, I didn't exactly have any specific plan for life that went past Saturday night, if you know what I mean. A good buddy from military school, Bill, went to the same college and lived a few floors below in the same dorm as me. So of course we were getting the party started before my parents' exhaust fumes had even evaporated from the parking lot. For the most part, the first month or so of college was pretty much like that, normal. I went to most of my classes, partied just about every night, chased girls around, and that was enough for the moment. But things began to change one night sometime in mid-September, and college would never be normal again. My dorm phone rings in the middle of the night. Hello? On the other end, I can only really describe the voice as kind you picture when you think of a computer talking, kind of like in the early models of GPSs. Hi, Gary. How are you today? Not fully awake, I'm just confused at this point. Who is this? He repeats. Hi, Gary. How are you today? It becomes clear that I'm being effed with, so I hang up and chuckle. Effing Bill, nice one. I passed back out. I ended up forgetting about the call for the next days and never mentioned it to Bill or anyone else. About a week later, I ended up getting another call around the same time of night. Hi, Gary. I'm watching you. Nice. Very cliche. Seriously, Bill, how are you not knee-deep in Everclear or a Tridel at this hour? Enough already. Cade, my roommate, is going to start getting pissed. I hang up. I casually confront my oh-so-clever amigo at breakfast the next morning, purposely trying not to bite too hard to give him the payoff that my insensitized continued calls. I also wasn't 100%. It was actually him and not another one of my douchebag friends. He gives a genuinely confused response. Whatever. So a couple days after the second call, I come home and see I have multiple messages on my answering machine. What the F? I barely knew that thing even worked. It's computer voice guy. Message 1. My machine cuts off the first second or two of the message, which tells me it's a bot set to play message upon answering. Hi, Gary. I'm watching you. Message number 2. I thought I asked you to answer my calls, Gary. Message number 3. Where might Gary be on a Tuesday night? Okay, so one of my friends is clearly an asshole and bored enough to really push for a reaction here. The next day I played the messages for Cade, who was around during the calls, which were apparently early in the night when he was still awake. He'd been a close buddy since we were in junior high, and we'd sort of taken separate paths after high school. So anyway, he's aware I'm a wild child and thinks nothing of the first couple of messages. By the third, he's a little spooked. I then walk down to a couple other buddies' rooms and casually but immediately bring up the subject. Nada. Over the next couple of days, I press all close or semi-close friends but get 0 answers and 0 suspects. The calls start coming more frequently over the next couple of months, starting at once a week, then to once every 2 to 3 days, up to every day by Christmas break. I don't say anything to my family at that point, although I really should have. What started out as a decent beginning to college turned into not showing up for any classes, tests, nothing. Grades reflect, and I am too busy answering from my 0.67 GPA to talk about some dumb prank that would most likely be dismissed as a pathetic attempt at grades explanation. So it goes. Uneventful break, and I go back to school determined to become a new man. I gotta get my shit together with these grades, so I tell Bill I'm going to have to chill out and focus on school. First night back, I get my first spring semester call from CVG. How is your family in Cyprus? Okay, now this is effing BS, man. What kind of douche lord am I hanging out with that even have the discipline to drag out a prank this long? I get the answer to that question a few days later, and the answer is none of them. Calls become threatening and downright dark. I'm very interested, Gary, in being close to you. Yeah, with that kind of weird sentence structure like that, I have tools I can bring. It's all going to be over soon. One day I bring Bill and my other buddies to hear the messages, never deleting a single one for some reason. I guess when things happen over a long period of time, you don't feel the cumulative impact until laying out the complete package of evidence. The guys are in shock. I guess I should mention that some of these calls got really specific in making sure to note specific details about my parents' address, as well as the violence they are planning to do to me. Cut open your esophagus, Gary, with a butter knife, and all sorts of other crap that is sort of blurred together through the hundreds upon hundreds of calls I got over the year. A chick friend of mine that I really liked in high school named Lila goes to a different school hundreds of miles away. We reconnected, thanks to good to ever be named in these calls, but it did get to me wondering if this was some new lead to the source. Layla is clueless when I call her about it. Awesome. I know that background was a lot to read, but you'll understand why I had to explain the situation when I tell you what happened next. One night, we're all partying, drinking at some hotel. I forgot to mention that straight A crap went right out the window as these events progressed. A different buddy, Carl, has a nice big truck that we all go in, but he passed out drunk at the hotel after pounding an entire bottle of whatever the fuck. I'm not really drinking tonight and I want to go get back to my own bed. I snatch Carl's keys to drive back to the campus, thinking I'll drive back in the morning to get everyone. This was one of the few times I'd even driven that year, so I wasn't tip-top on my directions. I made an early turn and somehow down a road I had never seen. I realized this pretty quick and I figured out I had a general direction of campus pledged so I can continue down the wrong road until I hit a familiar highway that I knew I'd eventually have to hit, and it's close to campus. I'm finding myself in open field, still a paved road and everything, but aside from the road there was absolutely nothing and it was completely black. Around 3 a.m. This is a really strange four-way stop that I come upon. Strange because I'm probably the fourth person in a year to drive down that road. Anyway, I trudge along, eventually getting to a familiar highway, and I'm home free. A few days later, CVG interrupts his usual depraved threatening to mention the four-way split and the time that I was on it, which, like I said, was around 3 a.m., and there was not a soul in sight. So yeah, I now realize CVG is obviously tracking my movements down. Note, I later joined the military, worked with the intelligence community, and worked special operations and tracked bad guys all around the world. To this day, I still can't figure out how this dude knew I was in the middle of those fields on the date in the middle of the night. I never mentioned it to anyone. Around March, this apparent rendezvous became CVG's focal point, and he made sure to let me know the day way close. The calls were coming in no fewer than 10 to 15 every single day. Seriously, the ringer was now off out of the courtesy to Cade, and I turned on the volume of answering machines as his phone calls recorded. But I finally get the message I've been waiting for. Keep in mind, I have now become somewhat famous at the university because of CVG. People were constantly knocking on my door wanting to hear the messages. Friends of friends of whomever I know. It was all people wanted to hear about at parties, blah blah blah. For a split second, it was cool because I'm pretty sure I ended up getting a few dates indirectly from introductions conceived through an interest in the guy with the stalker. Don't judge me. Moving right along, the day, time, location are set. We will meet in front of Coleman Hall at midnight, Wednesday, 27 April, and we will take our friendship to the next level. I know what you're thinking, and yeah, through the year I had considered the possibility that I was dealing with a female. Hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn, and I was definitely that kind of dude when I was around 18 or 19 years old. The kind that could attract clinginess and anger. But I definitely started to rule out females for various reasons that only follow ENFG would understand. Look it up if you're not tracking. I can build profiles with very high ratios of accuracy to available information. This creep just didn't feel like a female to me. It didn't even feel like a peer. I was convinced we were dealing with a mid-30s white male computer nerd that I'd come into contact with at some point in my life. Doesn't really matter because what I ended up finding out on Wednesday, 27th April, which happened to be Layla's birthday, I was wrong. Of course, everyone wants to be part of this juicy story, and there's a pretty ridiculous amount of testosterone floating around the dormitory on game day. This is a real-life creepster and a legit horror story unfolding before their very eyes, and groupthink will subvert caution if property motivated. These guys were ready to defend me with their lives, just ask them. So while these monkeys are getting all hopped up on Mountain Dew, I stay home and wonder what the F I'm going to do at midnight. Of course I was going to go, but dude, yeah, I've always been an athletic and in good shape wrestling, football, baseball team, yada yada, but I'm still a 19-year-old white female, good parents, grew up middle, upper class, white suburbia, had a good life. In other words, I can definitely hold my own in the street fight, but this, whatever this is, doesn't feel like a street fight or any kind of fight I'd been in. This is a disturbed, violent, angry, possibly grown-ass psychopath that had decided to dedicate almost a year now of his life to target and terrorize me. So yeah, I'm a little freaking nervous. My home team crowded steadily, built up throughout the afternoon and evening, with probably close to 70 or 80 guys grouped up at our dorm's common area, smoking cigarettes and talking about beating the shit out of people who were, and getting effed up, and all the other generic cliche shit you can imagine. Once the party hour approaches, though, over half the guys splinter off into various propositions that probably include more traditional fun like beer pongs and sorority girls. I'm left with about 15 to 20 members. I decide early that I'm not going to allow this knucklehead to shadow me, but I definitely could use them in case of emergency. I didn't want to risk spooking him out of the meet, so I let them know they needed to stay inside the dorm of the common area while I walked out to the meeting spot. Coleman Hall was adjacent to our connecting girls' dorm, and about 300 paces outside the door to get to Coleman. The witching hour came, so I leave the crew to begin the longest couple hundred or so paces of my life. My boys can see me through the glass doors, but wouldn't really be able to see me much once I got to Coleman Hall door. About 100 paces out from my spot, I observed two things at the same time. Number one, some kind of small quick movement in front of the patio walkway that goes all the way around the building. And two, the movement was in the spot along the hallway where only normal uber bright bulb is out. I'm not exactly sure how I was able to see him, but I suddenly realized someone was crouching behind one of the contiguous cookie-cutter bushes outside of the patio perimeter against one of the building's pillars. In dark clothing and a hoodie, he is a few feet off from the path where I'm supposed to meet him, in position to where I really should not have been able to see him, given the pillar blocking any shadow plus the burnt-out light. In fact, I could have easily walked all the way to the door without ever have noticed someone down there. Nope. Sort of jump mid-step as I see this, and I see him raise up a little, thinking I might have seen him. I see him raise up and take a step towards me, and fight or flight hits. I learn that my particular fight or flight chooses to fight in the middle of a mild situation. Flight during intense situations, but for your shit-your-pants situation, it's scarier to run away with your back towards whatever scary shit I'm dealing with, so I fight. Before I realize what I'm doing, I'm in a dead sprint towards this MF, who is going to see what I can't yet, which is my platoon busting through the glass doors in hot pursuit. Creepster noped the F out of there, running on the patio along Coleman towards the parking lot. I can tell this isn't the mid-30s computer nerd I predicted. Creepster is above average height, above average and built athletically. That's all I could really tell. I'm not even sure if he was white because he was at least tan, if not Hispanic, Middle Eastern. I'm really booking it as he turns right on a dime at the edge of the building. I realize I'm moving fast enough to catch him, but everyone else is really far behind. I also realize I'm moving so fast I won't be protected as soon as I turn a hard right at the corner of the building. If he stops there, I'm toast. As I turn at the corner, I see a van sitting alone, parked in the parking lot in front of me. It's running, and brake lights flicker on and off, parking to drive and begin inching towards the exit. Home Slice is, of course, heading towards the van, which for some reason brings a whole new level of fear to me. This is it. This is really happening. I'm going to get fucking murdered tonight. But I can't stop. Something keeps me going forward. I guess I'd come this far, dealt with this crazy BS for almost a full year now, completely unable to do anything other than try to ignore it. I'm not exactly going places academically at this point, and my life doesn't quite seem to have that much purpose to it yet. If I'm going to get schwacked, I will at least know, and this crap will be over. Plus, I still have a chance to catch the madman before he gets away. If I could get close enough to dive tackle, I would still be on my own to deal with the creepster, his driver, and now I realize there's a third one that is manning the sliding side door. Awesome. I don't care how badass you think you are when you're a 19-year-old jock, your chances of taking down 3 grown men that are already violent criminals and prepared to victimize are about 1 and not going to fucking happen, buddy. My turn is wide and slow due to being in a full-on sprint, and I lose ground. I'm probably 20 yards from the lot when he does a flying leap into the side of the van. There couldn't have been any rows of seats for a leap like that. Creepster number 3 slams the sliding door shut as the van peels out of the parking lot, bangs her right, and is gone in an instant. The relief of not being kidnapped, bound, and gagged in the van with 3 psychos who will most likely had some pretty horrific plans for me is now just as strong as the dread of the fact that this is not over with. I was speechless, and so was my platoon as they catch up to me a minute later. A few of them caught up enough to witness the parking lot scene, but no one was talking. Testosterone had now been replaced with genuine and earnest concern. They all just stood there with me, catching their breath and making sure I was all right. One guy asked if anyone got the license plate number. Not even I did. Not enough light. We finally start walking back, and I'm reliving the scene as we retrace our steps. As we get closer to the original meeting spot, I see something that scares me more than anything else in the entire equation up to this point. On the opposite side of the pillar where Creepy McCreeperson was crouching, there's a video camera standing pointed right at the spot where I would have been standing when I should not have been able to notice him. It is still recording. Alright guys, so that is it for this video. If you did enjoy the story, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will leave a link to where I found this. It is from Let's Not Meet, so if you did like this, make sure you let me know, because I do enjoy recording these type of things. I have just been sucked into these videos the past like 3 days. I've just watched so many of them, and I thought it would be fun to record one. But anyways, yeah, I did not write this story. It's not my story. I will leave everything in the description though, and thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!